Congressman Paul Gosar.
Thank you, Shane. Yeah. Thank you, folks. Well, I may not have legislative power, but I had this strange gift. It's called being a dentist. Bureaucrats kind of cringe because it shouldn't be about pulling teeth, but I'm happy to pull teeth. They just don't get any anesthetic. Thanks for the smiles. I needed those. Here's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to run through a PowerPoint here because I think people focus a lot more with pictures. And then we'll take some questions. Does that sound good? Yes. So away we go. First picture. One of the things we got to do is what was our plan? What did we accomplish? And let's look in the rearview mirror to see what we accomplished. Last year I had 6 bills signed and 12 additional pieces of legislation signed into law, becoming the most effective member of Congress, period, in the last Congress. The big key here is this third line here, 24 of 31 amendments passed. What that represents, that 31 amendments passed, means that I represented 1/10 of all the amendments during the appropriation process by all of Congress. Now think about that, of all of Congress. I had the result of cutting $1 billion out of the budget. Now imagine if 535 did that. We balance our budget. Pretty easy way to look at it. The other thing I wanted, they had an effect of 217,400 jobs. Not the government created jobs, a positive effect because what we attacked was rules and regulations. Okay? So let's see what we did. Next one. We got the Southeast Land Exchange passed, where it was an exchange of land that opened the 3rd largest copper reservoir in the world. This would bring $1 billion to our state's economy every year for the next 50 years once it's up and running. Finally got that done. Brings over 4,000 jobs, almost $300 million in annual wages. So a big deal to our state. And remember the 5 pillars of Arizona: cattle, citrus, climate, cotton, and copper. You know, even our skies are turquoise. That's got copper in them. Okay. Well, here's another one. The Catastrophic Wildfire Prevention Act. In fact, a gentleman today from Utah found out that we had passed some of these amendments that will allow it to go in and harvest beetle kills instantaneously with good stewardship. So this gets us back there. The second one was Bill Williams' Water Rights Settlement. This was an Indian water settlement. Article 1, Section 8, treaty obligations is the jurisdiction of Congress, right? Okay? This actually makes our water rights a little stronger in the Northwest. But here's another good one. I was responsible for cutting $353 million from the enforcement arm of the IRS. I thought you'd like that. I'm not liked in Virginia where all those people work. So, next one. So there's our rearview mirror. So we made a promise that we would cut spending, which we did, and we get something passed, even in a gridlock type of aspects. We just talked about the land exchange. It facilitates the largest underground, or the largest mine in Western Hemisphere, the 3rd largest. It may be the largest copper mine in the world. They just don't know from the assays yet. So this is a big deal. Copper is to Arizona as oil is to Texas. Okay, so we got some great things coming about because it's in everything. This would actually represent 25% of the US copper supply that we're utilizing currently, just this mine. Okay, so we got a great opportunity here. And remember, this money circulates 7 to 8 times in our state before it leaves our state as a mining. So it's a huge economic engine. And these are jobs that run anywhere from $65,000 to $185,000 with benefits. So here we go, folks. Something kind of fun. Next one. These are some of the amendments that we actually passed. Number 2, if you look up here, prohibited funds for life-size photographs of buildings called scrims. When they do renovations, what they do is they have this huge scaffolding, which I like. I'm kind of an engineering guy, and so we like to see the marvels of how they do this. Well, they try to hide it with these lifelong pictures to make them look perfectly the same. And you're spending tens of millions of dollars just for these stupid scrims. And when we asked them why they do that, they said, well, that's what they do in Europe. Hey, got to stop that. Some of these that will be coming up real close, like is down here number 11, is secured $100,000 for the Lower Santa Cruz Amendment. This is a wash that starts in Mexico. They have high ground, and when we get the monsoons, it floods all the way up into the southern parts of Phoenix. So it destroys our infrastructure, our businesses, and our houses. So what this actually does is a means to start harnessing the water that's shed, so we can make it work for us. So last but not least, you'll like this one. The court actually confirmed something I put in every time since I've been in Congress, the Second Amendment right on Army Corps of Engineer land, that you can actually have the right to carry. It was a window that was actually held open by the Army Corps of Engineers by the way the law was originally passed on public lands. And so this makes it permanent that you actually can carry a weapon on Army Corps of Engineers land. Okay? Once again, these are some of the amendments that we talked about. Roughly $912 million in cuts. So we're looking at trying to help the taxpayer. Okay? So once again, just redundancy there. Next one. So here's something interesting. This took an act of Congress. So when we dammed up the Colorado, we prohibited fish from moving back and forth, right? So Congress commissioned these fish hatcheries for sports fishing. So what the Fish and Wildlife Service decided they were going to do is shut it down. They weren't going to allow trout fishing or trout to be planted into the Colorado River. They were going to use it for humpback chubs and razor suckers. Anybody want to catch one of those and have it for dinner? I didn't think so. So what we basically did is, with a combination of working with people locally and the supervisors or state legislators, we went to work and actually turned that around. I got to tell you a funny story. So Dan Ash, who's the head of Fish and Wildlife Service, was in front of my committee. And the county of Mojave came up with different alternatives to what they were talking about, this fish hatchery with this intake pipe. And he hadn't heard about them. So my staff downloaded these, and I got up and I went to hand it to him. And he cowered. He kind of thought I was going to hit him. And I said, I'm not going to hit you, but I'm not the U.S. Postal Service. I'm the U.S. Congress, and consider it delivered. And everybody kind of chuckled. And I guess you're not supposed to get off the dais. But it was delivered. We got our point across. Okay? But this only Congress should be authorizing the termination of any alteration to vital programs. And once again, the legislative process. We got to go back to the constitutional application. Next one. Here's one that we just passed. This is going to be something that's going to be of interest to all of us. This is the dock fix. What we've done in Congress is we've done 17 patches in the last 14 years. Okay? I was part of 4 of those. And when I look back at my 4 years of those patches, some of them I didn't get a chance to vote with, and I can explain that to you. If you'd have taken the money that you tried to patch it with and invested it properly, you would have paid for 7 years. Something's wrong with that equation. This was going to be a 20-some+% cut in the reimbursement rate to physicians. They were ready to walk out. So there's only $70 billion of the $200 billion that's outlaid over the 10 years it's paid for. But I took the leap of faith because we're going to go find the extra pay-fors to make this work. But we got to start showing people that we can fix problems. And this makes a big deal in regards to if we're going to reverse Obamacare. So this has got some fundamentals, but keep our feet to the fire so that we're paying for this as we go. Okay? So there's 2 good reforms that are in this. Next one. Looking forward, some of the things that are going to come about for us are immigration, the EPA overreach, healthcare reform, combating ISIS, and reducing spending. We got to start looking at these aspects. Okay? So immigration reform. Who was at the state Republican meeting? Anybody? Yes. Remember, everybody said that we're going to hold their feet to the fire, and what did I say? That ain't going to work. We're going to fold like a cheap suit. Well, we did. Andrew Hannon actually helped us out, and he's still holding his ground with the injunction in Texas. Yeah. But I want to tell you something. The news isn't all that good. The administration right now is working in the 24 states that didn't file the amicus brief with that injunction at actually parlaying this order into reality. Okay? There's something else along with this. Okay? Now, I want to share with you, because I was one of those people, I was actually the person that took down the rule for that DHS funding. I want to explain to you what transpired here. I was unnerved by what transpired, and I knew that the Cromnibus aspect was a concoction of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, and John Boehner. Somebody got left out and got her feelings hurt, and that's Nancy Pelosi. But what you elected me to do was strategize and make things happen, okay? So when we started looking at this Cromnibus with all the crap that was in it, we decided to take down the rule, a set of friends of mine. So what we figured out is if we could make a motion to Pelosi, she would gather all the Democrats and vote with us. That's exactly what we did. We voted 216 to 214 until something happened in front of me. To my immediate right was John Boehner. There were 9 of my colleagues. One of them was Kerry Bentivoglio from Michigan. The other one was Marlon Stutzman. And the majority leader was telling those 2 gentlemen that we weren't going to pass a Cromnibus, that we were going to pass a 3-month CR. That's the only reason those 2 gentlemen changed their vote. And then what did they do? They moved the whole crap in the bus forward. They actually lied to us. That's how it went from 216 to 214. And we lost that rule. So that's what it takes to stand up. Okay? So we almost had it. But we're not done. Okay? Next one. This is what Nancy Pelosi said. And I said, hey, if this is security, come to Arizona, because we have no security whatsoever on our southern border. Okay, next one. This is going to shock you. There's usually a group that follows me around. It's the same group that's following around the Republicans running for president. So I feel like it's kind of nice. Now I'm in the same group of people. But they're a very liberal immigration group because I'm very poignant about this immigration issue. But here's some of the truth about what's going to happen to some of these people that are here illegally. They will be eligible for $24,000 to $36,000 of your tax money going directly to them for the unearned income tax credit. The year they're brought in and 3 back years. This is fact. Okay, not everybody will get it, but there are a number of them that will. And most of the time, if you're dealing with the federal courts, they'll find a way to make it fair so that almost all of them get that. Okay? So this is shocking. Okay? Next one. So there's something that we found out in statute. It's called the Anti-Deficiency Act. So Dr. Gosar, what's the Anti-Deficiency Act? It basically is a statute or a law that says for over 100 years that if Congress didn't statutorily tell you to work with a scenario, and if they didn't appropriate money, you can't use it for any other purpose. Over 100 years old. Okay? In conference, I went 3 different times to the microphone and said, are we looking at the Anti-Deficiency Act? On the 4th time, after we had passed Homeland Security bill, I went to the speaker and said, aren't you going to do something about the Anti-Deficiency Act? I've actually asked for an audit from the Government Accountability Office, and they've looked at me in disarray. He said, Paul, I don't know what you're talking about. Folks, this is a core bill and law. If Congress doesn't specifically allow it and doesn't appropriate the money, you can't spend it. So to his credit, he brought his whole staff with my staff, along with the majority leader staff, and they're looking for an audit. So we may be able to hold this president accountable because of that. So stay tuned. But we got to thank my staff, because my staff, your staff, works tirelessly to find all these little things. Okay? So this is a big deal, because it's not been used by the House and Senate in collaboration and can be an instant lawsuit against the president. Now, that to date, they've only hired 2 that we're aware of, 2 employees. That's too many still. So we should be able to nip this that quickly. Okay? Next one. Once again, the promise from the president, this just basically tells you, you can't spend this money without congressional authorization. Plain and simple. Okay? Next one. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And that's all we're doing right now. And when we didn't stop the president on Homeland Security, he got a willpower that he's going to keep coming. And Arizona will pay a price. But I do want to share something with you, the backdrop of what transpired. Because a lot of this is strategy. You got to start working out strategy. So the day that the Homeland Security funding was terminated was a Friday night. Does anybody know what happened during that day? The checks went out to all the employees. So what would it have been if the Speaker and the Majority Leader said, hey, listen, Congress, we're going to stay this weekend in Washington, D.C. We're going to let everybody scream that the Republicans are shutting down the government. Well, by the way, 80+% of all the employees in Homeland Security are mandatory employees. So you take your hits with the media. Just say, hey, we didn't shut the government down. And what happens Monday morning when people open up their bank accounts and their post office boxes? The check's in the mail. So they didn't shut down the government. You just bought 2 weeks. Now make the president put people on furlough. How about making him make a move? But we were so cheap and so indignant about the process, we folded like a cheap suit. So we got to start looking at strategy. You're only blessed with so much of it, so you got to take care of this. We actually looked for this audit in March of 2015 and was supported by 29 other members of Congress. Okay? So we're trying to be ahead of the curve. Next one. Future of immigration, I think, is very contaminated based upon what this president has decided to do. It's his way or the highway. He's in violation of the law. And there's more to this story. Okay? Without the rule of law, what else is he going to do? We saw at net neutrality that they violated the government interaction within the internet. Now going to start to rule it and credential it. Tax reform, he's actually threatening to actually increase taxes on capital gains by himself by executive order. He's also talking about reforms within the IRS, as well as takings of land and water throughout the country. We have 18 months, folks. We better start having a strategy. Once again, stand for something or fall for everything. Next one. So by the way, did everybody drink their whiskey today? Because water's for fighting over. That's right. In Arizona, we've got the most articulate water law. Once again, we have four Supreme Court rulings that defy the EPA from doing what they're trying to do and overreach within the waters of the U.S. So it's not just the legislative powers that this president is usurping, it's also the judicial aspect. Okay? We waited along for a while, and next one. So we actually put this one, a good friend of mine, Steve Stock from Florida, put this in last year. It didn't get through to the Senate. We actually put this forward. It's got 175 bipartisan co-sponsors. Transportation Infrastructure, who has germaneness over this process, has done nothing to this point. The EPA administrator believes that she will come forward in April with some of these rules and regulations. This bill needs to move. This bill needs to move. The Senate is already concocting something. This baby is ready to rock and roll. How would this affect you? Who's got a house? If you wanted to plant a tree in your backyard, you would be required to get an EPA permit. I'm just telling you. That's exactly what this is all about. This is about power and oversight. Okay? Next one. Obamacare. We saw King versus Burwell come up in the court discussions. Folks, we just missed another point of process. We can't reform the whole process, but we can make some huge inroads. Who likes the fact that you, the taxpayer, just bailed out the insurance industries by $4 billion this last year? Anybody like that? No. Thank you, Lord. Why didn't we go back for more choice? Why didn't we send a signal to the Supreme Court and break up the monopolies of the insurance industry? Let's talk about it. Let's pretend for a second that we're all cardiac surgeons here. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to price fix. What we're going to do is we're going to price fix what an open heart surgery or a bypass surgery is all going to be. What happens with that? We're under the Sherman antitrust laws. The FTC finds out about it. We all go to jail and we go to fines. So how is it that the insurance industry knows everything about each and every one of you? That's called collusion. In 1944, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Southeastern underwriters that they were not exempt from the antitrust laws. The insurance industry ran to Congress, and Congress intercepted that with a thing called McCarran-Ferguson. Why wouldn't we have passed the repeal on McCarran-Ferguson to give a hint, a wink-wink, back at the Supreme Court saying, we got your back? So that they do the right things in King versus Burwell and say that the subsidies in the federal exchanges are not legal. Guess what that does for you? That means each of those insurance companies got to compete for your dollars. Gives us more opportunity and starts lowering cost. Isn't that amazing? That's what we want, right? Choice. Okay? Well, how about when King versus Burwell goes down that we say, listen, we don't want the money back. We want that money to go into an HSA, a health savings account, as a defined contribution. Now what we've done is we've outflanked the president almost immediately. What's he going to do? Turn the IRS on everybody? He will, but good luck. But once people have that power of dollars in their accounts, it makes a difference. For those that didn't get a subsidy, we give a pre-tax dollar deposit as a defined contribution into their HSA. And then remember that thing called premium support that Paul Ryan talks about? Does anybody understand it? Well, let me explain. It's very easy. We've been doing it for over 20 years. In my district, does that help? Okay. In my district, the average age of my individual is 55 years of age. The average person is dual eligible, which means they're eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. That's how poor we are there. What happens when that individual cannot afford their Medicare premium? Who pays for it? Medicaid. That's called premium support. Okay, so we've been doing it over time. What's a great group right now who's having some problems? Where's my veterans? Everybody liking your veteran care these days? Wouldn't you rather go pick your own doctor and be able to go anywhere you want? Yeah. How about we do premium support and allow you to do that and go anywhere? Do you know instantaneously you get more people covered in that insurance marketplace than Obamacare ever thought? Do we fix everything? No, but you can't. Because what we've been doing is we've been destroying medicine since 1965. Yeah. So we've got to build a marketplace. This is the first place. Allow people to have money in their pocket to make the choice, give them more choice, and let the free market start to come around. We've missed this. We've missed this already. We still can recoup this in June when the decision comes. But here we go. We've got a definite opportunity here. Okay, next one. This is what I just talked to you about McCarran-Ferguson. Makes them compete just like all the rest of us compete. Okay? Gives us more choice. Go ahead. First and most important aspect. And puts a whole bunch of people in opportunities. Go ahead, next one. I'm going to go through a little bit faster. I put this slide up here. I don't know if you remember this little gal from Prescott that lost her life helping out refugees in Syria. Just keep her name and her family in your thoughts and prayers. This is a very difficult thing for this family. We tried in a number of aspects to try to get her saved, and it did not work. Okay, next one. Go ahead. But what we did find out is that we have to put a bill forward for a bounty system, right? That's how the West was won. We took evil guys, we put bounties on their head, and people turned them in. Well, how about we do the same thing in the Middle East? So actually, this is actually now started. There's up to a $5 million bounty on the people that have actually been indicted for kidnapping and killing an American citizen. Okay? I dropped it in the House. Marco Rubio dropped it in the Senate. And actually the State Department and the DOD actually adopted this. They had the ability to executive move this around. So that's actually occurring right now. Okay? But it took some push from us as well. Next one. Budgets. Folks, this is important. We have to start looking at these budgets. This year is probably the first year that we may pass a budget in 10 years. Okay? I hope. God, I hope. But remember, most of the budget deals with these blue areas called defense and discretionary non-defense. See the red? That's automatic spending. It's on autopilot unless you make changes. There's a couple that are going to change here dramatically, or could. This little sliver up here at interest on our debt. If it goes to historical norms, this will be one of the largest things on that pie graph. It will supersede even Social Security, which is down here at 808 this year, or in 2013. This is how far behind the federal government is with numbers, okay? And that could happen. We're going to see some inflation starting to hit. But if we don't start answering in regards to some of these questions on how we make this more efficient, we're not going to have a budget. And why is it important? Because if you start looking at the maps, the baby boomers, a lot of them come online, and we start taking off. So we've got to make those reforms. I'm going to hit two of those. I don't have all the answers, by the way. I don't think anybody does. But this is why I keep bringing it up, because maybe one of you does. Social Security. When we started Social Security, there were 23 workers for every retiree. Today, 2.1 and falling fast. When we started Social Security, it was meant for a 2 to 4 year window. Today, we're asking 10 to 14 years. Yes, it is your money. The government did take it out of a lockbox. But even if they put it in the lockbox, let's look at that money. In fact, I'm going to go back and look at 50-50 hindsight, all the way back, and use the best management practices of that money. At best, you get 7 to 8 years. So when you ask kids what's in it for them, this is the first thing they say. Why am I paying out for seniors? Is it going to be there for me? Let's go to the second one, Medicare. This is going to balloon even faster. Social Security is an easier one to fix. But in Medicare, in 1965, when you had a heart attack, $13 buys you enough glycerin tablets and bed rest, which was state of the art. Today, we're going to put you on a table, we're going to open up your chest, we're going to resect vessels, we're going to put new valves in. We may give you a new heart and the medications that go with it. It comes at a cost. And we have hired people that will not address this in front of the American people. I watched it happen in the last election cycle. Everybody remember Kirsten Sinema? What was her placation to seniors? I will never touch your Social Security and Medicare. If you don't fix this formula, you'll never have to. You'll never get it. Oh, here's how incredulous we are sitting on that line. What happens for a moment if the Chinese yuan becomes the world marketplace of currency? You can print the money, all the money you want. That $4 loaf of bread is going to be $4,000. You can't print it fast enough. You're toast. That's why we have to have this conversation. I also want to leave you with one point. Remember, people said with sequestration we didn't cut the budget? It was just the rate of increase. Notice this number up here in 2012. Spending $3.54 trillion, and in 2013 it was $3.45 trillion. Sequestration did work. In fact, the next number over here on 14 will be less than that. This year will be bigger because they've lifted the caps off of sequestration. It did work. We didn't have big boys and girls, so there were cuts across it. Yes, who wants a strong military? I do. Well, so look at this number. We went from 670 to 625. Now, what if I told you who was business owners here? Who owned a business? Who balanced their budget in their household? What if I told you out of this budget right here in defense, 1 out of every $5 is spent pushing paper called procurement? Are you happy with that? No. Now, you could find another $60 billion. Why don't we tell the military, if you find it, you keep it? We can't keep throwing money at these problems and saying, okay, they'll go away by themselves. We have to hold people accountable. This industry right here has never been audited. Never. They have an order by Congress from 15 years ago to be audited. This makes perfect sense, except in Washington, D.C. That's why I'm on the first plane out of there and the last plane to go to there. You ought to see my water paniers. I can only stay back there till I run out of Arizona water. Then I got to come home. Next one. Next one, Trees. Thomas Jefferson really understood this. If there was one power he could take away from the federal government, the power of borrowing. He knew the problem. Now, I'm a dentist. I'm a businessman. I've seen now, coming on my 5th year, the inactivity and the inability of Congress to balance our budget. So here's the next possibility. Next one. A compact for a balanced budget, a limited compact for an Article 5. 15 members joined me in 2015 for the original 13 for an Article 5. Alaska and Georgia have already joined. There's 2 others that have joined. There are 8 others starting to join. Here's what happens, why this is important. I don't want a full-blown Article 5 because you have a window of opening everything. What we need to do is show the American people that we can make changes, make them stealth-like, and keep it confined, that we have the advantage. This is a compact. What is a compact? A compact is an agreement each state has with each other. What this takes is a simple majority by Congress to introduce it, as a simple majority will not require the President to sign it at all. Once it gets a majority, this will be, the first one will be a balanced budget amendment that requires a majority, 26 states, that if the government wants to raise the debt ceiling, they would have to get 26 states to agree before they could do that. Okay? Isn't that an interesting aspect? Here's how it starts. It goes through, it's passed by both the House and Senate by a simple majority. It then goes out to the states. When 3/4 of them actually affidavit or agree to it, there's a quick convention to agree to the language that's already established that cannot be changed, and it becomes a constitutional amendment. That's something that we can hold Congress accountable for. Okay? So we're living outside the box. Nick Dranius has been very, very helpful for this. We've also had some gentlemen from Texas and a number of other places. So when you see this, this is something to be worthwhile and get our budget aspects under grasp. Next one. Here we go. The first thing that we do is get our budget, our finances under order, and that will help us. Makes it by we the people instead of we the Congress. That's how you can reach me, okay? So we covered a lot of ground here. I think the next 18 months are going to be extremely difficult because you got a president out of control. He's got the willpower and an attorney general that is second to none. I'm going to share one more thing with you. I am one of the gentlemen trying to hold up the nomination of Loretta Lynch. I'm extremely poignant about this. In fact, there were 3 Republicans that voted for her out of the subcommittee. Orrin Hatch from Utah, Jeff Flake from Arizona, and Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. Now, it hasn't come up on the full floor, so we got a chance. And this is where I need your help, is to call Senator Flake's office and tell him that it's important for him not to vote for Loretta Lynch. Here's your battle cry. She might have been a very good U.S. attorney. I will give that to her. I have nothing other to believe otherwise. But in her affidavit or in her auditioning, she never once upheld the constitutional obligation that she would be under, to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. She is not to interpret the law, she is to uphold the law. When it comes to writing the law, it comes back to the legislative branch. She doesn't serve the pleasure of the president, she serves the pleasure of the Constitution. One of the powers that we have is of confirmation. There should be no more confirmations at all until the president starts complying. The other part of this that you'll hear about is, well, Congressman Gosar must like Eric Holder. No, I don't like Eric Holder. In fact, I'm his worst nemesis. Does anybody know what the Vaughn Index is? Has anybody heard about the Vaughn Index? Go on the internet and turn up the Vaughn Index. This is about Fast and Furious. Remember all the documents that the president gave executive privilege over? They had to provide an index, like privileged information between Eric Holder and his wife Sharon, like privileged information between Eric Holder and his mom that shows his direct contamination to the information and cover-up of Fast and Furious. Anybody watched our Attorney General get hot over the last couple press reports? You know why? Go back and read them. He's involved. He wants out. The way that I always have fit my way I was taught is when you've done wrong, you face the music. So let's keep him on the kettle. Let's put the water boiling, and he'll hang himself. That's how we handle it. And if he chooses to resign, the president will do this without an attorney general. Think about it, folks. Seriously, this is no laughing matter. We are in desperate times because we have a president that we've never seen before. When Jonathan Turley makes a comment, we have been building an executive power since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Both sides, stronger and stronger and stronger, culminating with this guy taking us to a constitutional tipping point. But they had a partner, a dance partner, that did this hand in hand with them. Who was it? Congress. Congress was giving this away willy-nilly, and we allowed it to happen. So are you going to fight for something or fall for everything? Fight. It's time to fight. And we need strategy. That's why it's smart to have strategy. Let's go do it. Isn't this a golden opportunity? Because I think Shane and Randy said exactly the words. This is a magical time. Because when it's least, when there's an atmosphere of least despair, is it a golden opportunity for the biggest change. So run with it, grab it. You were born for this time. Thank you. So let's take some questions.